that. Dan, just do what you gotta do.
What I have to do. This week, we're talking about Star Wars.
I guess.
Yeah.
Because we
have to.
Yeah.
Because we have to.
We talk about Star Wars off camera pretty much every second that we're not on camera.
Yeah. So it's time to finally bring Star Wars to the episodes.
Right.
Yeah.
For our 5th episode.
To the audience.
The audience.
The audience.
Just Scott.
Yeah, Scott.
Hey, thanks for watching, Scott.
We'll give him a shit.
Yeah.
But what's the instigating piece of news, gentlemen?
So the instigating piece of news is the announcement of Star Wars Episode 7's official title, Star Wars The Force Awakens. Awake.
Isn't that a video game?
That's the Force Unleashed. Hey!
That's pretty close. Like,
It is pretty close.
Same idea. Like, I don't know.
Well, that game is pretty cool, so if they just
I've never played
if
it.
they want to go with that, sure, why not?
I know it's like everything that they come out with Star Wars now is like in between, like, oh, this is in between episode 2 and 3, or in between 3 and 4, or, some sort of in between, because there's nowhere else to expand except the future, really.
Yeah.
Which is what they're doing now.
That's where we're going now.
Yeah.
Sounds like it'll be fun.
So I guess maybe we should just start with talking about the name and what it means.
Right. I have no idea.
Well, at the end of episode 6, the only Jedi really is Luke.
Right.
So you could say that maybe it's about either his kids, which I think is they already said.
There's a whole series of books about that.
I know there's a whole series of books. I don't know how exactly they're going to take from the books.
Or just ignore them completely.
Or ignore them completely, we don't know. But I assume the Force Awakens mean it has to be some awakening of new Jedi or new Jedis.
Yeah. Well, I think that's, it wouldn't really be interesting
Is
if
Jedi's the plural of Jedi? Or?
Jedi is both, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Banished.
Get out of here. But yeah, if there were no other Jedis besides Luke, if Luke just died and he was the last Jedi, that would kind of be a kiss of death for your Star Wars movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Or we could just have...
Especially with a title
He'd be like super old and like, I knew I forgot something.
Yeah.
He forgot to teach everyone how to be Jedi.
That was on my to-do list for so long.
Can Chewbacca become a Jedi, please?
I don't know if he has...
He's just like...
He can definitely have a lightsaber. He can definitely hold one and use it.
Well, see, I think...
But I don't know if he could do, Force stuff.
I don't know. I think Chris has this idea that, only Jedi can use lightsabers.
That's absolutely true.
But I don't think that's true. I think Jedi is the weapon that Jedis use. I think it's just a piece of technology, though, that other people could use them, probably not with as much finesse as someone who is a Jedi.
No, I disagree, because the final test to become a Jedi is constructing your own lightsaber, so you're only, worthy of it when...
Well, worthy and able to use are two different things.
Well, sure. I mean, Luke used the lightsaber clearly before he was ready for it, or he at least held it and was like, "Ooh, this is cool."
Okay.
But
I'm saying you can physically use a lightsaber without being a Jedi. I'm saying
you won't be good at it.
Yeah, you won't be
you
good.
Won't be good at it.
It's like a knight. The Jedis are knights in the historical sense, essentially. But any slope could pick up a sword and swing it around, but a knight knows how to use it and actually can be skillful with it.
Sure, but I think they shouldn't. You should just not.
Oh, that's fair.
Well, I mean, hey, in the prequels, General Grievous uses lightsabers all the time.
Well, I don't like General Grievous. He's a bad, bad man.
No, but I'm saying he's
bronchitis or whatever is going on in the robot lungs.
Emphysema or something. but not only is he not a Jedi, he's not a Sith. He doesn't use the Force. He uses lightsabers to a proficiency where he can murder lots of Jedis and acquire their lightsabers.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and say that for every single other argument we've ever had, if I use the prequels as an example for something, you would be like, well, that doesn't count. So, not fair to bring up General Grievous.
No, the only reason I bring it up is because you always say that the prequels count for chronology, so that's a case where the prequels don't support your view. No, and I agree, Jedi should be the only ones who... or Sith.
That could bring us to another topic. What counts? You guys were talking before about the books that have.
I don't. Are the books
Luke's
technically
children.
canon?
That's the thing. nothing is canon anymore.
Nothing.
So the 6 movies, Star Wars: The Clone Wars animated series, and the new Star Wars Rebels show, those count. And, of course, the new movie that's coming out. Those all count. What doesn't count is every video game, like book, comic book, everything that's been published in.
Yeah.
It obviously counts as like this is a story,
right?
But as far as like setting the tone, it's like they're putting out specific stories now that they want to tell. They're really curating. Like Lucasfilm has a small group of people who are like curating everything that is Star Wars for the next however long.
Yeah. But they're not counting video games.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I probably wouldn't need it.
Yeah.
There's an inherent
Lego Star Wars, that happened.
Yes.
Well, if Lego Star Wars counts, then I'm sorry, because there's some amazing, extra, like, there's amazing, universe stuff that's going on in books.
And that's
that are
why people are upset about this.
Yeah. Well, see, okay, on one hand, you can't include all the books and all the sort of extended universe stuff.
Because there's probably like 2 people ever who've read everything.
Well, first of all, there's a lot of it. Ever since Star Wars came out, there's been books.
A lot of it.
Yeah.
The extended universe.
Before Star Wars came out, there was a book.
Yeah.
And then after it came out, there were comic books and
there's so much, and there's got to be a ton of contradiction between them.
Yeah,
and
probably.
I think because I think Lucasfilm is suffering. I think on one hand they're responsible for that, and it's not a bad thing. I think that people taking Star Wars and doing their own thing with it is perfectly acceptable.
Exactly.
But now what they're trying to do, after years of like selling the licenses for doing Star Wars things and sort of cashing in on it, now they're saying everything that has existed, everything that we allowed in the past is no longer allowed, and we are going to determine what Star Wars is because we're Lucasfilm, which I think is a very arrogant way of approaching it because George Lucas has this idea that he owns Star Wars himself, and he's the only one who can make creative decisions about it, and that everything everyone else does doesn't matter.
George Lucas is not on that creative team that I talked about before.
Well, at least in the past. That's
right.
And now, I guess, because I know he sort of stepped away from everything, which is a good thing in my opinion. But I guess Lucasfilm still has an iron grip, even if it's not George Lucas.
Yeah, that's I guess sort of the idea. But that means they demand a certain level of quality from the whatever content that they're going to be publishing or releasing.
Right. I don't see
and
it
as someone who's like never read deeper than the movies or played a handful of video games, I'm excited. Like it's like it really is a fresh start for Star Wars. And it's a good place for fans to start off.
Yeah, that's why I don't see it as arrogance. I see it as kind of like wiping the slate clean sort of thing.
Right. Like
the prequels are not generally received well, so it's kind of a thing saying people want more Star Wars, and we're gonna forget about the prequels. Or maybe not entirely forget about the prequels, but just let's take all this stuff and let's just start fresh. We're gonna get a bunch of the original cast, and we're gonna move forward, and we're gonna get J.J. Abrams, and we're just gonna George Lucas is gonna go somewhere else, and we're gonna
put him in a closet.
Lock him up.
Okay,
and Disney owns it. Woo!
Well, so Disney owns everything. Well, okay. There's some good and bad about all the things you've just said, because I think starting fresh.
There's a give and take for everything in life, Michael.
Yes, and it's obvious here because the prequels, whether you like them, I don't like them. I mean,
they're like a childhood thing. I mean, Star Wars, the original, is even more of a childhood thing for me. But I was 9 when Episode 1 came out, and I thought the Darth Maul fight scene was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire little boy life.
Yeah, and that's sort of what it was meant to do. And I mean, I thought it was cool when I was a little kid. I'm just saying, I've come to realize more and more what the prequels are, and where their faults are. Where I couldn't tell as a kid what the faults were. I couldn't be objective as a kid
because it was also the idea of like we're gonna go see Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like, that was like an event.
Yeah.
Like a new Star Wars is coming out. That's awesome.
You know, and the fact that I'm the oldest of us, and I was born in '91. The last Star Wars came out '83.
Yeah.
And the fact that we cared so much about that just goes to show the power.
Right.
And I mean, my nephew personally isn't like a big Star Wars fan at 7, but my cousin's kid Joey, he's like a huge Star Wars guy, and I think he's 10, and he like wasn't he wasn't really super conscious when all the prequels came out. So, and he's like super excited, like it's just going to keep going.
Yeah, well, I think Star Wars as a cultural thing it's huge, and it's. I think the legacy of the original trilogy is going to be there for a long, long time.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think the prequels will have that longevity, and I don't think that J.J. Abrams' contributions were, even. I know it's a bit premature to say, but nothing ever beats the original. And the original is what really sort of sparks the imagination for most people.
But talking about longevity, the prequels are going to be there for sake of because they're part of that series.
Yeah, and that was the problem. That's what I wanted to say earlier. Is that the prequels suffer heavily in that they are prequels, and that George Lucas is trying to tie a big knot. He's trying to connect every single thing that happens prior to what's going to happen in the future. Prior knowledge of what's going to happen plays a big role in what he's doing in the prequels. And there's so much cross-contamination that it's really hard to take it as its own thing because it's so interconnected and to its detriment, in my opinion.
Right.
And I think that in one sense with these new movies, they can start fresh, like you were saying. Like they can, you didn't like the prequels, but we're this isn't a prequel. This is new stories in the future.
Right, they're literally moving forward
which
from
is
the
good.
end of the story.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're heavily anchoring. It seems to be in their choice of casting. They cast a bunch of actors who were in the original trilogy.
Like Carrie Fisher.
The original
everyone basically.
people on the Millennium Falcon.
But how I don't know anything about the movie and what they're planning to do with the plot. I don't think anyone really knows.
But I think that they did also cast a huge number of younger actors,
young rogue people.
A few people you literally have never heard of them before, and then a few people who in recent years have garnered a name for themselves: Oscar Isaac, Adam Driver.
Yeah, right.
Well, I guess the question will be, will how big of a role are the older actors from the original trilogy going to play?
Right.
Are they just going to be in there for connecting it, which is fine? I guess the comparison, which we haven't made yet, but is sort of looming large over everything, is Star Trek. And J.J. Abrams and his new Star Trek movies, and what he did to Star Trek, is he going to do the same thing for Star Wars? You have Leonard Nimoy in the Star Trek 2009 movie, and that works really well because it's you have an actor from the original series who's connecting it to the new series, but it's not overshadowing it. You have a new cast who is portraying the characters, same characters, but entirely new cast portraying them. And it's a new timeline.
Yeah, it works its way into the Star Trek canon by saying it's alternate universe.
Yeah.
Within the plot, it works its way into the canon.
Sure. I think they're going to have a little bit more of a role than Leonard Nimoy does in the new Star Trek movies, because Leonard Nimoy, it's only Leonard Nimoy.
Right.
It's not like him and Shatner and
George Takei
or whoever. But because it's a bunch of them, I think they will have more, separation and more roles individually, rather than just little cameo.
But that's sort of very dangerous because, and again in the Star Trek example, Star Trek Generations, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's one of the worst Star Trek movies ever, and it suffers because Generations, you have a handful of the original cast, not just one guy. You don't just have Shatner in it, but you have several of the original cast members who are half the story, and then the other half is the Next Generation team. So you have both iterations sharing the spotlight, and it fails horribly.
So you're thinking that it might, they might spread themselves too thin in trying to tell
It's one thing if
stories.
it's one thing if you spend like the beginning of the movie like I have no idea what the plot is. Like, let's say you have like the kids of the older characters, and like they're the protagonists of the film, and like they're at the beginning and they raise them and they start off and then they're sort of left behind as the story moves forward. Mm-hmm. That I can see working because it's like you have that connection and you have the sort of passing of the torch to a new generation, literally passing the torch to a new generation, and then the story can sort of continue with new people, or they can have them be like heavily involved in the entire plot, which I think would backfire. I haven't seen it. I don't know what they're planning on doing at all, but
yeah, that's the thing too with this. It comes out like next year, and no one has heard anything.
Well,
they're very much keeping it a secret, which is great.
In preparation for today, I did a bit of research.
Okay, tell us what you know.
An article actually just came out yesterday. By research, I mean I did what I do every day. Just yesterday, an article came out saying that the first trailer was about a minute long, and they have it done, and it's possibly going to come out within a month from now. They said maybe before Mockingjay is the next Katniss, whatever.
Yeah, well, that's coming out in December sometime.
Yeah, so it's out like next week.
Does it?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Whoa! Okay. But yeah, they said that probably within the next month, the first teaser. Now, does that mean we're going to see like a bunch of stuff, or if it's just going to be like space, and then be like, get it? Yeah.
It's probably going to be space, the logo, a lightsaber sound.
Yeah.
Maybe like a Chewbacca growl.
Oh, imagine that's how the trailer ends. It's like.
Yeah. What if like a Wookiee was the main character? Like a main character,
I would love it.
But that no one can understand it. Like you just have to.
Just subtitles the whole movie.
No, not even subtitles. You just have to infer what he's saying.
Well, it's kind of like
exactly
Guardians of the Galaxy. With Groot.
Well, yeah, kind of. Or like
he is Groot.
Chewbacca doesn't have subtitles. Chewbacca makes noises, and then based on Han's dialogue, but we get one side of the story, and we sort of fill in the gaps with what Chewbacca's trying to say, which is great. Which is great.
You have no idea what he's saying.
Yeah, exactly. You can do, and that's part of the fun is that you don't know what he's saying.
Right.
So just imagine an entire movie like that.
No.
I love the scene when R2-D2 is playing that weird chess-like game with Chewbacca, and C-3PO is like, let the Wookiee win. He's like, and then he does this whole thing.
It's one of the better moments.
Yeah, that's great.
Um,
So looking to the future again, the only thing that I think I can definitely call is C-3PO and R2-D2.
Oh yeah, I mean they're in the movie.
They're going to be that, but are they going to know all the things from the previous movies, or are their mind wiped again?
I don't know.
Honestly,
their inclusion in the prequels bothers me, and we don't have to get into that discussion. But like, it doesn't really make sense that like Darth Vader built C-3PO. Like, it doesn't really.
Those
make
are
sense.
like little things.
Little things that really were unnecessary. But again, George Lucas, he got to tie every single element into the prequels, and it's why can't they just be random droids that happen to be on that ship? And
yeah, or why couldn't it like C-3PO and R2-D2 like be working with the Jedi like from the beginning, like how we assumed they did anyway?
Well, R2-D2 is the only one who actually has some sort of implied history because he had I guess some.
He's like the R2. Every ship needs an R2 unit for whatever reason.
They're repair droids.
Why could they could also say like every ship also needs a C-3PO guy?
But there's a bunch of other protocol droids on that ship that we see.
Yeah,
he just happens to be like a gold one because he's the character one. So he has to be different looking than the other ones. So otherwise we get confused. And that's the extent of what they thought about when they were making the original movie. There was no forethought, which is the biggest lie I think anyone ever tells themselves that. Like, well, George Lucas, he knew the entire story, and then he's just making them now. It's like, no, he did not do that. He had vague ideas of what he wanted.
That's true.
Yeah. And none of them became actualized in the trilogy because that's how movies work. You never get to do fully what you want, just because it's too impractical. And then he just, when he made the prequels years later, he, incorporated some of those ideas, but he didn't know ahead of time that was what he was going to do. It was way an afterthought.
There's a great bit by the comedian Patton Oswalt,
Yeah.
and he talks about that if he had a time machine, he would just go back to like the mid '90s and kill George Lucas
with a shovel.
With a shovel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a big plus. I mean, J.J. Abrams, he's not George Lucas, so whatever he does, for better or for worse, will be different than. And I think that's something Star Wars needs at this point is new blood, both
Absolutely,
in terms of the creative minds behind it and the cast.
Right.
So I think incorporating older cast members might work if they handle it well, and considering J.J. Abrams handled it with tact in Star Trek, I have some hope.
A new hope.
But I don't know, and we'll see what they do with it. They're not George Lucas, so they have some new perspective on it. One thing we haven't talked about, which I know we mentioned earlier, is the title, which we brought up initially. So they're not calling it Star Wars 7. I
don't think so.
Well, at least that's not the name that we released for their film. I mean, all the prequels were very clearly Episode 1.
Episode 1.
Star Wars,
2.
Episode 1, Phantom Menace.
Yeah, very clearly tied, because they're prequels, they're very neatly tied into a chronology.
Mm-hmm. And it's like and then they retitled the old movies with episode whatever.
Yeah, to make it work in that same chronology. Right. But it seems like they don't, at least based on just the name they released, that they're not including Episode 7 in the title. They might have like the opening title crawl, which they're going to have.
They have.
It's Episode 7, whatever, what is it called? The Force
Awakens.
See, when you say that, like, I know there's like fear going into this movie, but when you say like, oh, they're definitely going to have the crawl, like, I'm just picturing myself like a year from now, like sitting in the theaters and seeing that crawl and just like.
There's something about Star Wars, like going to see a new Star Wars movie that's exciting.
Yeah, that's always a great part of it.
But people were
and then after the crawl, cry.
Yeah, and people were massively excited for Phantom Menace.
Of course,
and with
people
good reason.
Saw it like 5 or 6 times before they realized it was bad.
Yeah, no, there was so much nostalgia and emotion behind.
I still haven't realized it's bad.
Well, it'll give it time. But But I think we, regardless of whether you like it or not, there is a certain level of disappointment with those films. They're they're not the original trilogy, and they never were.
Nothing will be.
Yeah, exactly. There's an inherent, bar that they can never, reach. And
see, it's funny because there's definitely like a bar that can't be reached in the originals, and the prequels are definitely not as good. I still enjoy them. Whatever.
Fair enough.
You guys must think I'm the worst movie guy ever. But I know people that like have even a step back and say like, I saw Star Wars when I was a kid, the original ones, and Darth Vader was like the coolest bad guy ever, and I hate Episode 6 because it showed that he was like a good guy the whole time, and I hate it. There are people that exist that think like Episode 6 ruined Star Wars.
No, but that was the prevailing people were not completely satisfied with Episode 6.
Even there's people who just don't like Star Wars,
yeah.
which I don't know who they are.
Who are they?
I don't associate with anyone.
Any of those people.
Well, my feeling is, and a lot of people had this opinion, like Episode 6, after the amazing cinematic genius of Empire. Nothing. Empire really just like ruined it for everyone because it was so good.
Empire ruined it because it was too good.
Yeah,
you're too good. Empire.
It was too amazing that nothing could follow it adequately. But I think Return of the Jedi is still infinitely better than the prequels. But I mean, people were upset about the Ewoks. They thought it was kind of silly.
A lot of cool stuff
I love Return. I love Return.
No, I do
scene
too.
where they're on the speeders running through the woods, like that's great.
His fight with Vader is awesome.
Oh, freeing Han Solo from the carbonite.
Yeah, of course. Everything with Jabba is awesome.
No, I'm not saying the movie's bad. Just for the record, I'm just saying
there's a lot of really awesome stuff that outweighs like Ewoks.
Yeah, people consider it the weakest movie in a film of otherwise amazing movies.
Oh yeah,
I think everyone agrees that like of the original trilogy, 6 was probably the weakest, but still it was great. It was a great film. Yeah, still a great film. Like I think it's generally considered Empire, New Hope, Jedi in terms of quality.
Yeah, definitely.
The original Star Wars, because it was the original, has a certain magnitude to it. Has a certain.
The story of like Luke going to Tatooine and then all this,
Yeah.
and then like blowing up the Death Star, like for A New Hope, like that's
I think that's another part of why Jedi is weak, because it has that same structure kind of with the first movie. Empire was very different, had a very different story and different feel.
Yeah.
And Jedi is very similar. They played it safe with the last one, which is a good decision.
They like wrapped up the whole trilogy.
Yeah, exactly.
It like Empire is great because I think it was like one of the first movies of its time where like you knew with Star Wars, like I mean I wasn't alive during the time, so I don't know if they knew that a sequel was coming out or they knew that it was going to be.
Well, it was like a massive success at the box office,
right.
so it was like they were probably going to
right, but still like they didn't know what to expect.
Right.
Whereas at the end of Empire, like Han is trapped in carbonite. Like Luke got his hand cut off. You find out that he's, that Darth Vader's his dad, and it's just like, all right, end movie, and everyone in the theater is like, ah, like just going.
It has sequelitis, not the web series by
Ego Raptor.
But no, it suffers from like I see this with countless films. When the first film is standalone because you don't know whether it's going to be successful.
Right.
Pirates of the Caribbean is a good example. It's a completely enclosed film. People didn't think it was going to be good. Turned out amazing. Then they made two more movies. The second movie and the third movie are always very intimately tied because they know they're making a third one.
They filmed them at the same time.
Yeah, exactly.
They released them like
then they had a fourth one. Did anyone see that?
Nope.
Okay.
So
I like the second and third Pirates movies.
Yeah, they're fine.
But that's the end of that conversation.
Enough of that.
Yeah. But I'm saying you
I don't need any more Johnny Depp doing this.
Yeah.
I don't.
Get out of my zone.
That's exactly the point.
Yeah. But what was I going to say? You always see that sort of scenario. And same with Star Wars. Like they, as far as George Lucas knew, he's probably only going to make this one movie, so it's sort of a self-contained story.
Make
which
it the best movie you can.
Yeah. And then when he knew he was going to make a second and a third because it was financially successful, he could take more liberties of having an extended story dependencies between movies.
And that's another thing with those first three movies. The prequels all are written and directed by George Lucas. The original trilogy, George Lucas did the first one.
Yes.
And then handed it off to other writers and directors.
Yes. Which I think is part of the reason why it was so successful, because he wasn't too intimately involved. Like, he's an idea.
Obviously, he was a producer and all that. And
he was involved.
Yeah.
He contributed to it, but he wasn't the primary drive.
And that
its quality.
is another thing that they're doing. With the new trilogy, I assume it's going to be a trilogy, is they have Rian Johnson, who did Looper and amazing episodes of Breaking Bad. He's doing episode 8.
Okay, so
they're spinning off.
Oh, so J.J. Abrams is doing The Force Awakens, and then afterward it's going to Rian Johnson.
Rian Johnson, yeah.
Interesting.
I did not know that.
So do you think that's going to result in like significant like style clashes?
I don't know.
Because I
think it's all going to be very like
heavily produced.
Yeah.
Right.
They've got a huge grip on what they're doing.
Star Wars: A New Hope was directed by George Lucas, and the other two are directed by. Do you know the names of the guys who directed the other two? They don't have like anything on their belt other than those Star Wars movies, and I think like the style obviously is extremely similar in all the movies. Wipes and all that jazz.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be like that, where what J.J. Abrams does with the first will kind of be very influential to the others.
Yeah. That's why I'm expecting it's going to have a very similar feeling as the new Star Trek movie. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
It's going to feel like that. Like, not in terms of, like, he's going to do the exact same things, but he's going to have this very exciting reinvigoration of an old franchise.
And
which he did well.
That's another conversation. When Star Trek 3 comes out, we can talk about that.
Yeah. I'm hoping that it's just a little better. I don't dislike the Star Trek movies.
They're fine for what they are.
Right, but I'm hoping it's a little more. I'm hoping it's more of like I'm hoping I'm getting Star Wars back. I mean, that's...
Right.
I'm skeptical.
There's a name to live up to, and obviously there's skepticism, obviously there's excitement. I'm excited.
I am definitely excited.
But I can't. I can't judge it until I actually see something.
See anything.
Yeah, I know, and we're speculating pretty heavily right now.
Of course, yeah.
I'm just saying, based on the information we have, we know the director, we know some of the component pieces of what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And we know the title. So I'm just assuming, based on the director, it's going to, and the past movies, it will never reach the original trilogy just by its nature, and it will probably be a lot better than the prequels just because J.J. Abrams...
Because of the quality of the people working on the movie.
J.J. Abrams is going to make a quality-made film, regardless of how much you enjoy it or not.
Right.
And so it's going to fall somewhere between those. I don't know, is it going to be close, underneath Star Wars? Is it going to have a very similar reaction to people? And it's
will it be better than Jedi?
I don't think so. But
we'll see.
The answer is
yeah, pretty much, yeah. But
I said the answer is no.
But it could be more close to the prequels, where people are sort of well, it's a new Star Wars movie, but it's not Star Wars. It's just some other thing called Star Wars that someone tried to make for money.
Right.
Or is it going to be something that is true to the Star Wars feeling? We won't know until it comes out. Really.
No.
Yeah. So.
Death Star, not Star Wars.
Yeah. Will something get blown up at the end of the movie? I guess that's probably a big question.
I sure hope so.
Statistically, yes.
Yes. Well, at least 2 planets have to get exploded. Yeah.
Alderaan 2. See you later.
So he's going to shoot a piece of red matter into the center of Alderaan 2. That's going to suck it into a black hole. And then they're going to go in a wormhole back into time and run into Darth Vader. Still alive, because of course they have to have Darth Vader in the movie.
And then Matthew McConaughey will be there.
I was your ghost.
I was your ghost.
Okay, I think we've
we've covered the Star Wars.
Yeah.
The Star Wars.
Well, I guess we can maybe come back to this briefly when the trailer comes out, which it sounds like it's going to come out soon. So
yeah, we'll talk about it again.
Yeah. So that would probably be this is just sort of our initial feelings on Star Wars in general, but
this can go on for hours.
We can speculate more.
It probably will.
We can speculate more heavily when the trailer comes out, which I'm
Absolutely.
looking forward to.
Yeah,
as am I.
I'd like to see something. I hope it's not a teaser trailer.
I think it is.
Well, they've been filming, right?
I think the movie's done filming.
So they can give us more than a teaser trailer.
They can do whatever they want.
Well, I'm saying they can. They have footage. Sometimes a teaser trailer is like,
we literally have a logo.
Yeah, we haven't filmed anything yet, but here's the movie.
That's true.
Here's the trailer. Ready? It's gonna be a picture of a guy like this, and then he's gonna turn. It's gonna be Mark Hamill. He's gonna go. Done trailer.
I feel like the worst trailer.
Well, I guess that's the other. I know we should probably be ending, but
yeah, we said we were gonna end this.
Whatever.
Go away.
Who's gonna be the protagonist? That's a
new character.
Because that's the other problem is that if you try to, you can't have any of these old people be the protagonist of the film. Indiana Jones 4 taught us that you can't have someone come back to a movie after so many years and actually make it good.
Yeah,
it's not gonna work. But that's just fine. This is just an afterthought. I'm sorry.
It is still Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford became a grumpy old man. I'm sorry.
You're a grumpy old man.
He's a grumpy old man.
Hold on. I'm going to end it on the one thing from Harrison Ford's AMA. Someone asked him, who shot first, Han Solo or Greedo? And he answered, I don't know and I don't care.
Yeah. That's about right.
Which is, right. 1, the best Harrison Ford answer. 2, the best Han Solo answer
you
could have ever given.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
I think that's a wrap.
Okay. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye, Scott.
Bye, Scott.